So keep in mind these kind of things, that when you look at these statutory things and things like that, this is important to understand, that you want that person to report it, you want that person taken care of. We'll make that determination whether or not it's an injury or whether it's an illness. You want to report all those claims. But like you say, there are some things that go with that. Now, the statutory rules also require that the employer report to their work comp carrier within 6 days after they've been reported, the injury's been reported to them. If they tell you that it happened, you should document that and you should direct them to fill out the first report. Now, here's the next caveat. Even if you don't report it to us in 6 days and we get it a little bit later, we're still going to process that. That we're not going to deny the process to the injured worker because the employer didn't get it to us within 6 days. The people that track that are going to be over at the Department of Labor and Industry, and they're going to determine, if this becomes a habitual habit, they may contact you and say, okay, you're not following the rules here and you're doing this more times than not. What's going on? All right, the main thing to keep in mind, we don't want you paying for the medical bills. You report the claim to us. Part of what happened was in 2011, they redid some of the work comp stuff. We talked about it. I think we made a presentation on 334. One of the things that we wanted to talk about with 334 was the fact that it instituted utilization and treatment guidelines for the doctor. So when a person goes to the doctor, they're supposed to follow those treatment guidelines. And that's one of the things that the claims examiner follows up on. And then if the doctor decides to go outside of those treatment guidelines, then that's when they get with us and they talk it over and make sure that that's the best treatment going forward for the injured employee, okay? So what can happen here is that if you violate this and don't give us the chance to work the claim, we can't guarantee, one, that the doctor's going to stay within those utilization and treatment guidelines. That's one. Two, you know how much money it costs to go visit the doctor these days?
$500 don't go very far.
No. You might get a doctor visit as long as it's just, oh, okay, it doesn't seem like anything's wrong. But the minute they start doing diagnostic stuff, like an MRI or a CAT scan or something along those lines, think of the cost of that goes. Now, if you're starting off trying to pay for this, what's going to happen is that very shortly you're going to find that you're at the end of your rope as far as paying for this. And so then you'll turn it over to workers' comp and say, well, we were paying for this, but it's turned into a claim, but I can't afford to pay this anymore. So what you've done for us, though, is you've eliminated our ability to validate the claim through the normal process. So because you paid for it, we have to accept it. You've accepted it on our behalf when you pay for the medical bills, okay? So report it to us, let the claims examiner work the claim, make the determination of what needs to happen here, and work with the medical provider. That's the best care that you're going to get for the employee. And the other thing is that the claim's going to be properly worked, okay? So it's important from that standpoint that you guys understand that. So this is the actual form. So when you look at this form, you go, holy cow, look at all that information that has to be filled out on this form, right? So let's we just kind of break it down a little bit. But one of the first things I want to show you is that this is not necessarily a state fund form. What happens is that this is actually a government form. It's through the Employment Relations Division with the Department of Labor and Industry. They're the ones that come up with the form. We may modify the form slightly in the fact that what we highlight might be different than what they have, but it's in the same layout, it's in the same look, everything else is the same. It's just we put our different heading on it. So this one up at the top is the one that State Fund has. This one down here is the one that comes off of the DLI website, the Department of Labor and Industry website. Okay, so they're basically the same form. So filling this out, this is a normal insurance form. Starts off name, all that good information, address, those kind of things, social security number, date of birth. But there are some differences here in the fact that, well, one, we want your education level. Now, I had an opportunity because I had some carpal tunnel a couple years back, and I thought, I'm filling out the first report of injury, and I got to this and I'm going, now what in the heck do they need my education level for? Are they trying to say that because I didn't have enough education, it's my fault? What is this all about? What it is that if the injury is so severe that you can't go back to your regular job after getting you healed to the best of the medical provider's ability, then we need to educate you, and we need to know at what level we're starting out to get you there. All right, so that's one of the reasons they want to have this information. Again, see, this information goes from the time that we start the case to the time we close it. So all this information is collected. Keep in mind, if you already have a PhD, that's going to be a little hard for us to get you any more education, but you can kind of see how this would work for us. We want to know what gender you are. We want to know what medical or your marital status. Now, here again, what does that have to do with the injury? Well, that has to do with working the particular claim. Let's say that you ended up having to have surgery while you were on the table, you pass away. Now we need to, there are medical survivor benefits for your dependents. We need to know if you were married and how many dependents that you have. Okay? So again, this is just information that a little abnormal to see this on a particular, like an injury report or anything else like that. This is right here where this section is that we want them to sign. The only complaint I've heard so far is that that doesn't appear to be very, everything else is kind of highlighted. That doesn't look like it's highlighted as well. And also you start the employer section down right below that. So generally what will happen is we'll have an employer will accidentally sign it in that location when they take a look at it. So just keep in mind where that signature is, because it's right after that medical part, but it's hard to keep track of it. So just keep in mind where that's at, but we need to have the employee sign. If the employer signs it here, we send it back and ask the injured employee to again sign it. Okay. Now we will collect information. You can fill these out online, but again, we can't fully process it until we actually have a signature. So we'll send it, once we get it filled out, or you guys have it filled out, submit it, we'll actually print it up, send it to the injured employee to have them sign it. Okay. So from the employer's standpoint, again, we want information from them too as far as their part in all of this. But part of this also is that there's a question on here I think that it's very important that we have a discussion on, and that is, in this section it says, do you have any reason to question this accident? Doesn't mean that you don't think it's a valid claim. That's not what it's asking, is it? It says, is there any reason that you have to question this claim or this accident? And I think it's important that you guys understand this is where you can communicate with the claims examiner. If there's something you see as a red flag, if there's a concern that you have, here's where you put it. Okay? Now I know from being, from the part of the injured worker, if you said yes on this, and as the employee, I know that I'd probably sit there and go, well, he thinks I'm lying to him. And that isn't necessarily so. But it might mean that you just have some questions that you want to have answered as far as whether this is valid or not. So you need to have that discussion with your employees right up front before they get injured, that there is this section in the block that you're going to answer, and it's up to you guys to, and it's your discussion. It's your feelings about this particular incident. It doesn't necessarily mean that you doubt what they're saying. It just means things aren't quite adding up as much as that we would like to. I have some questions. That's all it comes down to. Okay? And that's their part in that, so that they understand that.